Okay, so good morning, everyone. We have a crowd with us this morning, and we are having some coffee and conversation with Joe Smolinski, who is our city manager. And I'm going to kick it off this morning with just a couple of topics of conversation. So they're not really questions.
Why did you air quote that?
So I'm going to kind of warm him up for the crowd, and then we're going to open it up and let people ask questions of Joe this morning. But I'm going to start off with something that, two things that have kind of just over the last week have been on my mind. And again, they're not really questions, but just things that I think all of us have run into. And the first one has to do with technology. Okay. And I have my little fancy Dick Tracy watch. And I think about this, and I think about the Internet of Things and how connected we are and will continue to be. And we've got 4G now. They say, whoever they are, that 6G is what we're going to be looking at in like 7 years. What does that do to a city?
Well, I think it'd probably be much like it is in the transition we're going through now to 5G. We'll probably see legislation come out, right? It says something along these lines that the cities, municipalities, counties, no form of government can place barriers in the way to the development of technology, right? Some of you have probably seen the funny looking poles that are up around town, kind of in between power poles or in between light poles, or sometimes hugged right up next to them. Those are 5G towers. And a couple of years ago, when one of the last legislative sessions, we were told you can no longer prohibit someone from doing something in the right of way. State considers the right of way theirs, even if we bought it. So I think that'll happen. But I'm in favor of that anyway. That's just Joe speaking. That might not be my city council. It may not be all of you, but I think the more that we can do to make sure that everyone has equal access to the internet and the abundance of information that's held on it, I think the better off we'll be. Likewise, I think the cities, all forms of government, school districts, everyone will benefit from improvements in technology. So I look forward to it. I welcome it. How exactly it will affect us, who knows what that will actually be, right? 10 years ago, I would never have thought that my phone would look like this and I could do all that I could do on it. We thought we'd be Zooming to every meeting we go to, unfortunately. So who knows what technology will look like. Our job is to be nimble and agile enough to deal with it when it gets there.
So are there things that you're thinking about now as far as how you can improve to use technology, incorporate it to increase the efficiencies of what you do day in and day out within the city?
Sure.
Using technology?
Sure. I think like everybody, we kind of fast forwarded a little bit this last year and a half, 2 years now. We're learning that we can do some things more efficiently than we've been doing them traditionally, right? Everyone shows up in the office with their little briefcase at 8 a.m. and I don't carry a briefcase. I just assume the professionals in the room carry a briefcase. My purse, anyway, it comes with me. But no, we're learning that there are certain people that can work remotely, work from home, and get just as much as, if not more, done. And it saves them some time in running the kids to childcare and then coming back to work and whatnot. So yeah, that's just one example. We kind of fast forwarded, but we're looking at all kinds of technology in water treatment, collection, distribution of water and sewer, stuff like that. Where our water treatment plant is one of the most advanced that there is right now. We've been fortunate enough to stay ahead of the curve on stuff like that. We do pilot studies at our treatment plant all the time for new technologies that are coming out, specifically as it relates like membrane water treatment we're trying to remove the chemical processes from treatment and go with more mechanical processes, which is inherently more safe for everyone involved, so.
What about services? So I know in the business world, everybody's kind of gotten used to where, bring it to me. I want it brought to me, delivered to me. How can you do that with government services what are the things that can be delivered or brought to, so to speak, to citizens so that they're not having to go somewhere to get something or do something?
I think we'll probably see a few services, and I'll use the library as an example. Or if you did want to check out a book, maybe we have sort of an Uber Eats sort of format, right? Call up, order your book, say, hey, this is what I want, order it online, place that order online, and then someone can deliver that to you. We already have a mobile vehicle for our library, has wireless internet access on it and all that kind of stuff. We set it up when we do classes with either HOAs or classes with schools, anything like that. So I think that's something we're probably going to see here in the near future, probably not the too distant future. More importantly, though, I think our job is going to be to make access to all of our services easily available to everybody. And you used to have to come to City Hall to pull a $5 garage sale permit. What a waste, right? What a waste. So you do all that
The
stuff
permit
online.
or,
Both.
okay.
I don't care how many. Brent cared how many garage sales we had. But yeah, I think making as much of that stuff available online as we can, so people have that available to them in the way that they want to access it. I think that's something we're trying to move to all the time. But like you mentioned before, as technology advances and new technologies are available to us, we'll try to harness the power of those things and turn those into service delivery mechanisms for us to the public.
Okay. The second thing comes to.
That was technically two questions. So
No, that was like a topic. That's why I kind of did the topic.
Oh,
thing.
that was the.
Okay. So the second thing is in regards to, we're like what, maybe 73 something thousand people.
So in April of 2020, we were at 72.
Okay.
So you figure we're probably somewhere around 74, 75.
Okay. And we think we're going to get to maybe 158.
I think if our ETJ, our extraterritorial jurisdiction, develops in a meaningful way, in a way that makes sense, we could quite possibly get to 150,000.
Now, okay, you said something there. Now I'm gonna have to go back and ask you a meaningful way. Clarify that, and then I'll go back to my question.
Well, I think anytime you talk about developing a piece of property, right, or allowing something to develop there, you have to balance the cost of serving and servicing that area with what it will bring in terms of revenue. Now, in local government, we don't really consider that revenue like we're making money.
Right.
Those are the funds that are available for us to provide police, fire, streets, water, sewer, libraries, museums, stuff like that. So I think you have to really balance those out. You have to also take property rights. We're really big on property rights in Texas. You have to look at all of those things and try to strike a balance and say, what is the best use of this property? We're realizing that density isn't a bad word, right? I'm not talking about apartments here. I'm talking about, lot width, stuff like that. If you go back to pre-World War II types of developments, you didn't see cul-de-sacs. You didn't see, you didn't see really, really wide roads. Our fire trucks have gotten bigger over the decades, so we kind of adapted to that. But unfortunately, what that means is we've widened our streets. But that pre-World War development, all the porches kind of pushed up to the sidewalk. Everyone hung out in their front yards, and met with their neighbors, talked with their neighbors. Typically, those are on lots that are more narrow than the 90-foot lot we have here in Mansfield. We would refer to that as urban sprawl, which, by the way, is probably the most expensive type of development for us to serve. So I think knowing these things and prioritizing neighborhoods over subdivisions, that's, I think, a meaningful way to develop. I think we'll end up with more density, not necessarily apartments, but density. And I think that's a good thing. We just have to stay the course on that one.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to my original question. So if we're gonna get from the 74 to the 158, that's an increase of 80 some odd thousand folks. So I know now, coming out of my neighborhood, there are days that I have to like peel out to get in line, to get out, to go somewhere. So how are we going to move us on roads?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with,
Okay.
I'm gonna set this answer up, right? So in 2020, we did a citizen satisfaction survey. Sent that out to our residents and said, before we start formulating the budget, before we start developing the budget for this year, we want to make sure that we're asking the questions of our residents. What is it that they want to see? What do they like about what we do, and what can we do better? And the number one request, I'll call it a request. The number one request was that they wanted us to mitigate traffic congestion and stay on top of infrastructure. We were talking about roads, we were talking about traffic congestion and stop developing because there are too many Californians coming, right? That was an actual comment. It was an actual.
It's true.
It is true, isn't it? We love our Californians, so you got that right. Okay. Yeah, but the number one complaint was that. So we started by saying, okay, let's take a look at what they're talking about. Did some follow-up questions, right? And what they're talking about really is they don't like sitting in the traffic light at Broad and Cannon for 2 cycles. That's ridiculous. They shouldn't have to do that. Why don't you have more lanes? Okay, well, let's follow that through to its obvious conclusion, which is we need more land. We need your land, right? We got to take that. We got to widen the street. We're going to have 8 lanes on Cannon instead of 5 turn lane, 2 in each direction. So that's more pavement that needs to be fixed. And you've just built something for rush hour or school drop off, school pickup. That's what you've just built, that $50 million, expansions to all of these intersections for. That 95% of the day have a few cars on them at a time, right? So it's not, in my opinion, it's not the best allocation of resources. There are other things we can do. But with that being said, we're constantly looking at how do you time traffic lights, stuff like that, because we can time them different throughout the day. Right? So we already do that. And if any of you have ever been to Austin or Houston or downtown Arlington, anywhere, you know what traffic really looks like. That's congestion. I think here, when you consider this, if you consider this a small town or a bedroom community, which it is not, you would hope that you wouldn't have to sit in lines, but you do during certain periods of the day. So that's our challenge, is how do you make those folks happy and do it in a responsible way? And it's difficult to do. I do think you'll see commuter rail come up here in the next decade or 2. So we're focusing on, in a few areas of town, considering those urban cores, right? Where you specifically want to be more dense, and you need 3 elements. That has to be a place where people live, has to be a place where people work, and there has to be something for people to come and do there on the weekends. Otherwise, no one's going to invest in a commuter rail stop there. So I'm hoping that that'll be a way that we can reduce some of the traffic congestion as we evolve technology, stuff like that. Talk about Lyft and Uber. Those are things that reduce the amount of traffic on the roads. Who'd have thought 5 or 10 years ago that we would all be calling Uber and Lyft? You know, we'd all have that app on our phone. So well, I want to go here. I'll pay my $10 to get there. That's fine. And then I mentioned earlier, putting an emphasis on neighborhoods instead of subdivisions. So I live in a subdivision.
Mhm.
I've got a 90-foot wide lot. I'm the problem. In all honesty, I'm the problem. I can't walk to anything. If I need to just grab a loaf of bread, I have to get in my truck, drive, wait in the traffic light.
Mhm.
I go to the store and then I come back. Neighborhoods, if you think again about pre-World War II developments, were places where you had free range kids. I'm air quoting that too. Free range kids where, you know, it was a neighborhood. You could walk down to the neighborhood store, a little corner grocer. You could walk to get a haircut at the little barber shop in the development. You got places for people to eat, places for people to work. Those are neighborhoods, right? And we've taken our city council on some trips to go visit some of these neighborhoods. And one, if you guys are ever curious, I would look up Norton Commons. Norton Commons, it's in Prospect, Kentucky. It's a beautiful example of what a neighborhood could be. So we took our council there and showed them, and it's all the rear access garages, you know, with front porches pushed up to the sidewalk. And as we're walking around these neighborhoods, and we walk them, you know, there are a bunch of people out on their porches, just saying, "Hi, how you doing?" We ended up talking to a number of them about what they like and what they don't like about their neighborhoods. I think you're going to see some of those coming. I'll tie that back to transportation. If we can get people out of their vehicles and into their sneakers to walk, to get a loaf of bread, I think we can do a lot toward extending the life of our roadways.
In Texas, in the heat.
In Texas, in the heat. So it has to be convenient. It has to be convenient. Right now, how many of you have ever walked in the last month? How many of you have ever? I know you're not supposed to say anything, and you just go like that.
They can.
Walked to a grocery store or walked to a corner store. Exactly.
Parking lot.
Yeah, from the parking space to the store. That's about as far as you can walk in the Texas heat. But would you be willing to walk an equal distance from the parking lot, to that grocery
Or
store?
would you want to live next to it?
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about corner stores that are Walmarts, right? We're talking about neighborhood grocery stores, stuff like that, markets, stuff where you can get those necessities. That won't altogether remove the need to go to a Sam's or a Costco or whatever. Those have to be out by themselves by design, right? They're just a sea of parking and concrete, all of which collects water and runs down into our drainage systems, collects all the stuff that's on the parking lot at the same time. So again, tying that to transportation, we need to reduce the reliance on the automobile. That's how we'll be able to mitigate traffic congestion in the long run.
Okay, well, I'm gonna open that one up to the crowd.
Everyone agrees?
All right, Joe, I'll jump in on that. I don't disagree with the concepts of neighborhood. I've been hearing this for a number of years. I'd love to go visit this place in Kentucky you talked about. But Mansfield is greatly built out at this point. So we're still going to have what we currently have. We're going to have the 90-foot lots, the large subdivisions, the grocery store 4 miles down the street. So we're not going to bulldoze those subdivisions and build the neighborhood you speak of. So we still have those problems of Lori getting out of her subdivision in the morning. What do we do with that?
Well, let me go back to, we've already got these neighborhoods that are the way they are, and they'll never change. That's not altogether accurate. We don't see it in some of these newer neighborhoods yet, but we see it in places like downtown. where the housing stock has gotten a little older, right? So you're seeing redevelopment in those areas. You're seeing folks come in before council and asking to subdivide a single lot and put two homes on. They subdivided into two 45-foot lots. We're seeing people ask for what we refer to as accessory dwelling units. What does that mean? That's a granny flat. That's a casita. That's a mother-in-law suite, a garage apartment for your kids when they graduate college and can't afford a place of their own. So I think you'll see what we would refer to as hidden density increase. I'm hoping that over time, what you'll see is some of these lots that are in your existing neighborhoods, maybe a developer comes in and buys up a lot or two, takes those houses down and builds a little neighborhood grocer or something like that. That's not outside the realm of possibility. That's not a massive investment, but it's something that could certainly be done. But you're not wrong when you talk about Lori's neighborhood. Well, she's kind of where she is right now, right? So we do plot out, we take heat maps, right? We plot out where some of the social infrastructure of a community is located. Churches, library, grocery stores, daycare facilities, barber shops. We actually look at where these things are. Where do you go? You know, what are some of those things you have to do, and how close or far are you from those? So when zoning cases come in before us, when a developer comes in and says they want to do something, and we know we've got a cold spot in that area, we talk to them about those types of neighborhood, we call neighborhood services, the social infrastructure where people come and bump into each other that might not otherwise bump into each other. So we talk to them about that. There's an active effort to reduce the reliance on the automobile and cut down traffic congestion. The answer can't be to double the width of every street in town. Can't, because you eat up developable property. And this is a simple math equation, right? You eat up developable property that the city will then own. There's no taxes paid on it, right? So nothing can develop there. And then we have to pay to replace that road. We have to pay to fix it. If it's twice as wide as it is today, it's going to cost nearly twice as much to repair it or replace it. And then we have, because we've eaten up that developable property, there aren't as many people to carry the burden of that cost. So what does that mean for our long-term tax policy? Your taxes have to go up. Our long-term tax policy goals are to reduce the burden on single-family property owners. So we need to make sure, again, tying us back to your first question, that the decisions we make with regard to land use changes, zoning changes, are done in a responsible way, and we weigh out all of those different things. But this isn't something that will happen in the next 5-10 years. It will happen gradually over time as people realize, man, it's cost, gas prices go up. They don't want to wait in those traffic lights. So those things will happen, I think, organically. But we'll give them a little boost. We'll try to encourage them to do that every time they come in for a zoning change.
It's an interesting problem because if you think about it, and I read something about it the other day, it conflicts with the American way and the problem of population and the increasing population and what our liberties are. And it literally strips away our personal liberties is what it does out of the necessity. And then it goes back to the decline of civilizations previously before ours. And the reason why they failed is the complexity. And the complexity over time to continually solve problem after problem after problem, you create more and more problems and you can't sustain them. And this is where we're headed.
Well, good, you're right. But the good part of that is we know it's coming. We know it's coming.
But we haven't learned from our previous thousands of years, obviously.
Let's hope to God that we have. You know, we know that the population in North Texas, particularly in the Metroplex, grows exponentially every year, right? We know that. So we better be making decisions
Mhm.
now that allow us to meet the needs of the future today. We've got to make those decisions today. We've got to recognize that those problems are coming, those challenges are coming. And we have to be mindful of what decisions we make today. If we don't do that, then we'll find ourselves out of necessity plowing down neighborhoods and redevelop it. We simply will have to do that. It's kind of an
It's
evolution of
interesting.
the city. You go from rural, right?
Yeah.
You start out there rural, then there's
City,
then there's
go to the
suburbs,
suburbs,
and
back
then
to
they're
the
more,
city.
then they're more urban, and then they become full-fledged cities. That's the life cycle of a city as the population continues to grow. Jeff Brogdon once told me when we were talking about painting a water tower, of all things, but I took a lesson from it too, which is, we were asking, should we put, all of the girls' basketball championships were on one tower. And it was all from Mansfield High Schools, one school. We now have how many high schools?
5 comprehensive.
Five high schools, all of which, by the way, perform extremely well in all of their athletic endeavors, right? So as state championships and stuff like that continue to accumulate, I said, Jeff, we need to paint this tower. It's time. It's chipping. Do we want to put the championships back up there, knowing that other championships have been won? And he said, sometimes it's just too bad that you're too good. Sometimes it's too bad that you're too good. And what he really meant by that, what my takeaway from that is, sometimes when you do something really well, people want a piece of that. They want to be involved. Everyone wants their name on that tower, right? Everyone wants to live in a city with, that is fiscally sound. You've got a great school district. You're close to major job hubs like Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington, stuff like that. So too bad we're too good. We've been blessed geographically. We've been blessed with some things that a lot of communities don't have. So people will continue to want to live here. They will do that. They will continue to want to live here. So we've got to be mindful of that.
Brent had a question.
I know we are always, conflicted on how and when road construction occurs and how that is ultimately paid for. Looking at ongoing maintenance, I know generally the city's idea is when growth is occurring, that growth is helping to pay for those new roads. But on the existing roads, has the city been able to start look at any unique ways to help continue to fund the maintenance of those roads with adjacent use or anything like that?
So street maintenance is paid for, street maintenance and or replacement is paid for typically out of three different pockets, right? You've got the operations and maintenance budget, which by the way, last year was roughly $2 million. That's to fix potholes, replace panels on roads, stuff like that, replace curbs. We increased that budget by 50% coming into the new budget in response to some of the comments we got in our citizen satisfaction survey. So we added $1 million to that budget so we can be a little more aggressive in our efforts to maintain those roadways. So operations and maintenance is the first way. Impact fees is another. You've heard the term growth pays for growth. What that really means is that when a new business comes to town or a new development, let's just refer to it as development, they pay something called roadway impact fees. It's based on the intensity of use and size of the property that they use and the projects that are projected to be needed in that particular quadrant of the city. So they pay those fees that go into building and replacing roads. So growth is paying for growth in some aspect. And then you've got certificates of obligation and or general obligation, right? We issue bonds, either voter approved bonds or council approved bonds. We issue that and then pay that out over 20 years. The idea behind issuing debt is twofold. One, you don't want to have that big a hit for a roadway in 1 year. It's a pretty big hit. Two, if we issue the debt, then future residents will help bear that burden. Right. So I don't know if that answers your question, if you're talking about land uses and whatnot, but you do have to be mindful, again, of what you put on that piece of property. Sometimes that development will actually end up paying for the replacement or improvement of that roadway that's needed, which is great. And in some cases it doesn't. And you have to be mindful of the intensity of your use that's along that roadway. You don't want to overburden the infrastructure. It is a delicate balancing act. It takes some serious consideration.
Were there any possibilities of, say, unique financing maybe not financing methods, but maybe certain zones that you could incorporate, say, similar to downtown, like there's the TERS for downtown, to do something similar like that for maintenance operations on major thoroughfares?
Yes. So you can use, there are two financing mechanisms that you could use. You have a TERS and a PID. So a PID is a public improvement district, right? And for example, I live in South Point and I'm in what's called a PID. So I pay $1,000 annual assessment when I pay my taxes, and that money comes back and goes into this PID account that is then used to maintain the roadways, maintain more specifically the stuff that you can see, right? What makes that development special? The significant differences in the tree line medians and amenities that are in that particular development, that you can use a PID to do that, and they can cover the construction of roadways. You can issue PID bonds. You can pledge future additional tax increment to a particular project. And then, as you mentioned, you can use a TERS, which is a tax increment reinvestment zone. Downtown is one of those. So we drew a line over a geographical area, drew a boundary around it, and said, what is the taxable value of that property today? And then we use that as ground zero, right? Day one. So the new increment that's generated as development occurs in the downtown area, that money, that additional ad valorem, goes into a pocket that is spent on the infrastructure down here. So I'll paint you an example of how that works. So you had the Bexley on Main come in, right? $50 million taxable value on the ground on just like 10 acres, something like that. So they contribute a significant amount of money to the downtown TERS every year. Well, we take that money and we redid North and South Main, built a trail over the railroad tracks. We made a number of improvements to infrastructure down here. And the hope when you do that is you'll see future private dollars go into that area. And we're seeing that. We just may be familiar, maybe you've heard about the city's 4 acres. The city owns 4 acres out here off of Smith Street. We entered into a memorandum of understanding with Hope Global, and they're talking about building a $50 million plus development right here on 4 acres. By the way, that's incredible. But that money will go into the TERS. The additional increment will go into the TERS to pay off debt that is issued for roadways and infrastructure here.
So what about, say, up and down major thoroughfares that need continued repair? Can you do something like create a TERS on the commercial property that's within the 50, 100 feet of each side of that road?
Yes.
To continue the maintenance for that road?
Yes. So PIDs and TERS work very differently. In order to use a PID in that instance, you have to have the property owners have to sign off on it. They have to say, yes, please tax me more. Right? The only way that happens is when the developer comes in and wants to develop and say, hey, yeah, but there's infrastructure that needs to be paid for. How about a PID? Okay, because they're going to sell those lots, right? TERS, we don't need anyone's permission to do that. We can create that and then pledge the increment. Remember, you have that day one, ground zero, right? And the additional increment that comes along as development occurs. We can draw that geographical boundary around whatever we want. But what we're doing is we're agreeing to give up some of the revenue generated that would normally go into the general fund, right? Which pays for streets and all that. We're dedicating that money to this particular area. And that's not a bad thing. That can be a very useful tool. Where that becomes really useful is we get the county that area sits in to also participate in the TERS. And they've been willing to do that. You know, Tarrant and Ellis County in particular, then they participate within 2 TERS with us. So you get the county money to pay for that road as well. So TERS work to our benefit in that regard. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, you can do that. You can be pretty creative if you're willing to be.
Okay. Change the subject. Yes.
Yeah, let's change the subject.
Do it.
Okay, Joe, so we used the term balance a few times this morning. What's your vision for the balance as we move forward with a finite amount of land between industrial, residential, and commercial growth?
Okay. So the largest land use we have right now is streets. Streets and right of way. You wouldn't think that, would you?
No,
People want more of that, right? Okay.
not necessarily more, we just want it to move faster.
Well, how do you do that, right? You either widen it or I'll leave that alone. But, yeah, so we have 25% of the land within the corporate limits as they exist today of Mansfield still yet undeveloped, right? So the 75% that's already developed, we know what that mix is. We're looking at that last 25 and out into the future in our ETJ to say, okay, how do we manage that growth? How do we balance the uses? Right? We know we're going to need to serve those folks with parks. We know we're going to have to give them access to typical city amenities. We need to find the most cost-effective way to do that so we can meet our long-term tax policy, which is reduction of the burden on our single-family property owners. So I'll use an example. We would look at, let's say a piece of property came in and you had 2 developers that wanted the same piece of property. One of them is going to be a warehouse distribution center, right? Like an Amazon or pick anything, right? And then you have one come in that is residential neighborhood subdivision, call it whatever you want. There's a difference, call it whatever you want. We have to say, okay, well, what's the more appropriate use for this? You know, we have one before us right now that we believe is not the best use. We've got a warehouse distribution developer that's come to us, and we believe it's not the best use. One, because 1,000 18-wheelers on a roadway every day has a very different burden, presents a very different challenge than do 2,000, 3,000 Volkswagens, right? It's just very different. It's very, very different. And the intensity and frequency with which we have to maintain those roadways goes up. It costs money, it's tax dollars. Now, we may have that warehouse developer may say, well, I'm gonna put $300 million worth of value on the ground, but they're also gonna bring $15 an hour jobs, okay? $15 an hour jobs. I'd ask this question of D. D, can someone that makes $15 an hour purchase a home in Mansfield?
Maybe Arkansas.
Right.
No.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because so our job is both economic and community development, right? So if we bring 1,000 18-wheelers in a day, and we have this $300 million warehouse, that, by the way, not many people, very, very, very few people that live in Mansfield are actually going to work there. We have a transitory workforce. Right now, only 7% of the people that live in Mansfield work here. That's it. So all of that is additional burden on our roadways. So if we're going to make a choice between those two, the residential development makes more sense in that regard. The one that I'm talking about, this warehouse distribution, would put 1,000 18-wheelers dumping out at the front door of over in M3 Ranch. That's going to be a middle school, or what will that be in M3 Ranch? Right off of
In M3,
yeah, in M3.
Intermediate and
I think there's intermediate and middle school.
Okay, so do we want 1,000 18-wheelers dumping out in front of those two schools every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Probably not, right? Probably not, because they're not going to agree to not come during school drop off or pick up. So we're weighing that in our minds as well. We also consider the school district when we make these decisions. Okay, how will our zoning decisions impact the school district? Is it safe to say that you're seeing a larger number or greater number of students come in at the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade level than you do? Yeah, and that's a function of two different things. One's the cost of the homes of the building. Average home in Mansfield, average new home is a little over $600,000 this year. You typically can't buy that home when you have, kindergartners. You're not as far along in your career, in your life, typically, than you would be, if you had high school students, right? High school age kids. So we try to balance that as well. We talk to Kim, we talk to them about, hey, these are the developments that are coming up. How will this affect you? Want to know that. But back to your original question, which is the balance. If we're going to agree to change the zoning on a piece of property to something that's industrial and or commercial, office, something like that, our goal is to make sure that they bring jobs to the city that people that live here would want. Otherwise, we're creating jobs for people that live outside of our city. And they don't hear this term called payroll terms. And it's good to create any job because people that make money here are going to spend their paycheck here. That's not the case with $15 an hour jobs. They're going back to where they live and they're spending their limited resources close to their home. So we need to be very, very purposeful in the types of businesses, one that we would incentivize. God help us if we incentivize a warehouse. Right? That's crazy. But yeah.
Okay. I'm hearing that we're targeting midlife residential growth. Is that? I've never used those terms together before, but
It sounded like you planned to put those together.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
Yeah. So when you say target, are you talking about with the type of product we turn out today?
Yeah, for the build out, that's where the build out is going to be, is with, like you said, it's not the kindergarten families, it's the later life and it's residential.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say at the moment, the type of we'll talk just about residential right now. The type of residential products that we're turning out, that our developers are turning out, are very expensive.
Yeah.
And therefore appropriate for people to buy that are later on in life, right?
Mhm.
Talked about density and efficient use of property. So if my $700,000 home is on a 90-foot lot, and I could put, two $400,000 homes on that, which by the way, creates additional shoppers, creates additional heads for the school district, all that stuff. Is that not a more efficient use of that property? Granted, they're driving on the roads more, right? So where in town is that? Do we have an improvement to that road in our master thoroughfare plan already to balance all of those things? All of those considerations you can actually find in a zoning packet that the staff puts together that goes before council and P&Z. So I would love for us to have housing options that would support families that are a little earlier on in their family cycle, right? I think that would be great. What I definitely don't want to do is bring people in here, right around that 8th, 9th grade level, right? And only give them a few years to fall in love with our city. Love to have them to where this is their hometown. This is where they grew up. They went to elementary school all the way through high school here. They love it. So when they go off to college, They have that bit of nostalgia about Mansfield, they want to come back. We want to make sure we have jobs that will allow them to purchase a home here. We want to make sure that we have housing options for them when they get here. So
That's the part that intrigues me, is that we want people to work, live, play here. And I'm not hearing the work options under that scenario. You know, earlier you said, we're not a bedroom community, but
But we
since there's,
are.
well, we are. I mean,
Yeah.
7% of the people live, work and play here, right?
Yeah.
So we certainly are. And, you know, I guess I'm just trying to understand the clarity as far as what are we and what are we going to be? If we're not going to be the bedroom community, then how does that transformation, what does that look like? And where is that growth to promote six-figure income jobs within the city of Mansfield is what it clearly takes to be able to afford current housing
Current housing.
prices.
Or how do you bring in the low end and
Yeah.
mix it, I mean, like, see, here you go,
yeah,
the complexity.
we're gonna get.
Yeah, and I'll tell you,
stuff
you know,
that people think is
The
taboo.
challenge for
Just
all,
do
the
that.
challenge for all of us running
Yeah,
industrial
can't do it.
businesses
The
right now
complexity.
is that, you know, we have to continually go further and further out geographically.
Yeah,
And now we got people, you really want me to commute 45 minutes for a $15 an hour job? I mean, it's.
This
it's
is your
economic.
reality. You live in this reality.
Yeah, and that's why we have a really tough time attracting people into the area.
Isn't that why we're getting so many, I mean, apartments? That's the only place people have to live.
Well,
but apartments are more expensive
let's
than a
ask
house.
that question. Let's follow that one through.
Yeah.
If it
No,
costs
no
me,
maintenance.
if it costs me $2,000 a
A
month
month.
to live in an apartment.
Yeah,
1 and 2 bedroom units, not multiple units.
Yeah, a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment could cost me as much as $2,000 here in Mansfield.
No maintenance though. No
I agree, and
insurance.
that's a life, in my opinion, it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah.
I would prefer to have the Olympic swimming pool, the fitness facility, and not have to mow any grass. I want to live like that, right? So I choose to live in an apartment, right? But if we had townhomes and row homes and, you know, hidden density where you have, you know, duplexes, triplexes and quads that all have a front, by the way, it looks like a single family home, but you have multiple families that can live there, and that's hidden density. All of a sudden we become a place where younger families can come and live. And that is a simple matter of zoning. It's just zoning. That's all it takes.
They're still expensive, extremely expensive. I mean, you know, we begged for having something like Ladera. We got it. It filled up quickly with people that are moving down.
Ladera 2 is coming, by the way.
and-
Those are-
And they started at 350,000.
For a
Yeah,
very small footprint, right?
It's
it
not
is.
1,700 square feet on some.
$100 per square foot, that's pricey.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's funny when Tammy and I were looking to buy the home we're in now, you know, get on Zillow. Sorry, Dee.
I know.
Get on Zillow, you look around and homes in Ladera, 2-bedroom homes are going for $500,000.
Yeah.
But you're paying for the lifestyle there
Yes.
also, right? You're paying for the no maintenance, but a single family home. You're paying for all of the amenities. You're paying to keep kids. Get off my lawn, right?
Yeah.
There aren't any kids that live there, right?
That's
They're
true.
all 55 and up or whatever it is. So you pay for that. You pay for that option. I paid for the option in South Point in terms of a PID and higher HOA dues. I choose to do that because that's the lifestyle that fits. That's the product that fits Tammy and my lifestyle at the moment. So let's talk about something that's going to be taboo. People are going to hate these words. And they're going to want to run me out of here.
speak
They're gonna want
louder into the
everybody-
microphone.
Yeah. Now, there's a difference between low-income housing and attainable housing. They're different things. Low-income housing, people typically think of as Section 8, you know, everyone, by the way, every property here in Mansfield, almost, is eligible for Section 8 funding. So people think, oh, I don't want those people, right? I say this all the time, but if the sentence starts or includes the words "those people," shut up. It's a bad sentence. But yeah, that already exists. That's here. We can't even stop that. Legally, we can't stop that. But if we had housing that was attainable for families that, that are younger or earlier on in their life cycle, I think that does a couple of things. In my opinion, the beauty of any community isn't that it's all of one mindset, right? It's the diversity of a community is what makes it beautiful, in my opinion, right? It's kids of different socioeconomic backgrounds, all living on the same street and playing together. That's how you bridge the gap. We've got some significant problems in the world today. I think we can do our part in trying to bridge that gap and solve some of that stuff. Again, I would urge everyone to just consider it attainable housing, not low-income housing. These aren't bad people. It's just where they are in their lives. Tammy and I, I make good money. I have a job that allows me to give back to the community. My wife and I were on food stamps 20 years ago. That did not make us bad people. It didn't. And it didn't make us people that didn't have skin in the game or anything like that. I'm proud of that. We started our careers, we were right out of the military, 2 kids and another one on the way. That's just where we were in our lives right then. Had to live in an apartment. $600 a month apartment off of Trinity in 360. But that's what we can afford. That's where we went. And we worked our tails off. Went to college, worked nights with 3 kids, and it just is what it is. It doesn't make you bad people. It doesn't make you gypsies. These are the people that we should be welcoming to our community because they add richness to it, in my opinion.
I have followed the growth of Mansfield over several years, like the last 10. And it seems like we are right on target for our growth projections.
Yeah.
We may be going a little out of bounds on that right now. What if we were to have a huge influx of people? I mean, we've had a lot of Californians, yes, and we're going to continue to have that. But like people that, huge increases.
So what you're talking about is a growth rate that exceeds our ability to manage it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about. So when you talked about, getting to build out some of the challenges that presents, that we're not just talking about, increasing the number and width of roadways and stuff like that. That's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about the provision of city services too, right? There's certain departments that have to grow as your population grows, and there's certain departments that don't, right? Our development department doesn't necessarily have to grow if they can handle the growth rate, right? But our police and fire services have to grow with the population. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The more people you add 1,000 people, you have to add officers to take care of them. You move farther out, you have to add fire stations that can reach them. Fire station alone has about a $2.5 million operating cost every year. And that number only goes up each year. So again.
And that's why people want to be here. We're safe. We've got good health facilities. And, and every time somebody moves here, we need more of that.
Yes.
That's the very reason they're coming.
Yeah. Good news is we do have the ability to choke back the throttle a little bit if we needed to. We have that ability. When a zoning case comes before.
We got a gate.
You don't have a clip.
We have a wall.
By the way, I hate gated communities and cul-de-sacs. Those are 2 of my pet peeves. Cul-de-sacs are nothing more than, taxpayer subsidized private drives. Don't like it. Don't. I think they should have a PID and they should pay for their own cul-de-sac. It's private drive. I don't live on a cul-de-sac. By the way. I live in a gated. Which
Oh,
means living
hey.
in that, I have to pay for that roadway because it's not open to everybody, which is how it should be, right?
Yes.
Nobody helps me pay for my couch and I've got to replace it.
I got a question. So kind of along a similar line, but from a different perspective. I'm one of the 7%, right? I work and live here in Mansfield, president of my HOA. And now our infrastructure that was built by our builder, developer, is starting to deteriorate, right? The brick wall is falling down, the things need to get done. And we're finding out that they weren't done correctly at the beginning of things. So how does the city help the local neighborhoods, the associations that are here now, the people that are here and want to stay here? We came for the schools, you know, we trying to do the live, work, play thing here, but how do we stay long-term in our neighborhood? And how does the city support the local community like that, the association like that, help their infrastructure?
You're gonna hate this answer.
I just need an answer.
It's not, so everyone sitting around the table that does not live in your gated community should not have to pay for your roadways. They should. You chose for that to be private. In choosing for that to be private, you took on the responsibility of having to maintain that because it's now yours. I don't get to drive through there.
Generally, the
Sure.
HOAs have allocations for assessments.
But is there support from the city on like help us make sure that the wall that we do put up is within the new code?
They'll come inspect it for
Yeah,
you.
but we can't even get that help. Like we try and get the city to come out and inspect stuff. We try and just get, even if it's just guidance on how to do this, how can we set up resources for those neighborhoods you're talking about instead of that right now are associations, our communities, our subdivisions? How do we keep the value of our neighborhood and keep growing our neighborhood and do that in the right way and all together instead of just one neighborhood going off on their own and putting, you know, wood fence or something like that instead of the brick wall that was there before?
Yeah, so whatever the plan development was that was put in place by your developer, I won't ask you who it is or where it is, but whatever